In today's video, we're going to revisit a macaronage experiment I conducted a couple of videos ago. It was a spatula versus the mixer. I'll link it in the cards above if you want to check out that video. But ultimately at the end, I felt like I overmixed the batter using the stand mixer. So I wanted to revisit that experiment again. And these are the macarons that we made in today's experiment. So let's jump into the video and find out what happens with this macaronage experiment where we use the stand mixer to do the macaronage process.
First, let's measure our ingredients. I'm using my base recipe with the Swiss meringue method. This recipe is in the description below. As you can see here, I combine the almond flour and powdered sugar together and push through a sieve with a whisk. Make sure to discard any large pieces that will not go through the sifter. Then I'll use the whisk one more time to make sure the powdered sugar and almond flour are well combined. Next, I measure the granulated sugar. I'm going to be using an optional ingredient, dried egg white powder. I'm going to combine 4 grams of this powder to the granulated sugar. This helps to stabilize your meringue and makes your shells fuller. I like to mix together with a spoon and just make sure the sugar and the egg white powder is well combined. Now let's make the meringue. You want to start with a pot of barely simmering water. Place your egg whites on top of this pot and pour your sugar into your egg whites. Begin to stir and combine your egg whites and your granulated sugar. After just 1 or 2 minutes, check your egg white mixture for any sugar grains. The goal here is to make sure all the sugar is melted. Once it's melted, then you can transfer your egg mixture over to the stand mixer. I slowly turn up the mixer to a low speed, and I'll keep this speed for about 30 seconds, and then I'm going to increase the speed up to an 8. I'm going to whip until the meringue is glossy, and then I will add our color. Now I'm going to add a few drops of teal gel food color and slowly turn the speed back up to an 8. Now I want to whip until we get to stiff peaks. That's straight, pointy peaks. See how the peak is bent over? This is not ready yet. Let's keep going. Slowly turn back up to an 8. After another minute or 2, let's check again. See how the meringue is clumped in the whisk? And look at those straight, pointy peaks. This is exactly what we're looking for. Now I'm just beating the meringue back down into the bowl so that we can begin our macaronage experiment. Okay, so for the macaronage experiment, I'm going to keep this in real time. First, I'm going to add about half of the almond flour powdered sugar mix to the mixing bowl. For the experiment, I'm going to use the lowest setting on the mixer to try to keep the most control. I'm going to use a spatula to push down the batter into the bowl so that it can mix thoroughly. Now I'm going to raise the whisk and just knock down the batter back down into the bowl. As you can see, we still have some dry ingredients that aren't incorporated. We just want to make sure that the batter is good and thoroughly mixed. We also need to add the other half of our dry ingredients to the batter. Again, we're going to continue to mix the batter to incorporate the dry ingredients, and I'm only using the lowest setting on the mixer. I'll continue to use the spatula to help push down the batter to the center of the bowl. Again, I'm going to lift up the whisk and knock down the batter back down to the center of the bowl. As you can see, we still have a few dry ingredients that aren't incorporated yet. So we just want to make sure that the batter is thoroughly mixed before we truly get into the macaronage deflating stage. So again, I'm keeping the mixer on the lowest setting. These next couple of rotations will help to incorporate those last remaining dry ingredients, and the macaronage process has begun. I'm going to be checking the consistency of the batter about every 15 to 20 seconds. Let's take our first peek at the batter. Right now the batter is looking still very thick. It's not ribboning off of the whisk, and it's not falling back in itself into the bowl. I'm going to double check with the spatula just to make sure. And yes, the batter is still very thick. And I'm just going to push the batter back down to the center of the bowl and try to scrape the sides as best as I can. Let's continue for another 15 to 20 seconds. This time I'm going to turn the mixer up to the second lowest setting, to a number 2. Okay, let's check our batter again. It looks like it has loosened up. I'm going to use a spatula and just double check. I want to see if I can do any figure eights with the spatula. My goal is to be able to do 2 or 3 figure eights with the batter before the batter breaks apart. It's still looking on the thick side, so I'm just going to push the batter back down to the center of the bowl, and we're going to keep going. I'm going to keep the stand mixer at the second lowest setting on the number 2 setting. And again, I'm only going to go for about 15 seconds. It won't take long for this batter to loosen up. Okay, let's check again. The batter has definitely loosened up and it's starting to flow off of the whisk. Let's do our figure 8 test. Again, I'm looking for being able to make 2 or 3 figure 8s before the batter breaks apart off of the spatula. Let me remove the whisk so you can see this better. Okay, let's perform some figure 8 tests and get a good look at the batter. 1. Nope, not yet. Let's try again. 1, 2 and a half. I think the batter is right where we want it. Let's check again. 1, 2 figure 8s and still flowing. Yeah, this is where we want the batter. I'm going to turn the bowl up to see if you can get a better look inside the bowl. One more figure 8 test. There's 1, 2, 2.5 figure 8s. This is exactly where I wanted the batter to be. And you can see how the batter melted back into itself. Let's stop the macaronage process here and pipe our shells. Now I'm going to pour the batter into a piping bag. I'm using a 1.5 inch template, which you can download. There's a link in the description below. And I'm using a number 12 round tip. Remember to remove the template, bang your tray to remove the air bubbles. And I'm using a scribe, or you can use a toothpick to pop any remaining bubbles. Now let the shells rest for 15 minutes to an hour until you can rub your finger over top of the shell and no batter comes off on your finger. You should feel a thick, matte skin on top of the shell. Once our shells are dry, let's put them in the oven. As you can see, I'm using an oven thermometer and baking at 300 degrees for 15 minutes. The shells are out now, and let's get the first impression. It looks like I do have a couple of cracked shells, but for the most part, the shells turned out okay. Now that the shells have cooled, let's bite into one. It appears we do have a slight hollow, but the experiment's not over yet.
So at this point in the experiment, we see that there is a small gap between the top of the shell and the meat of the shell. We do have a hollow. I want to test this for 24 hours. I want to fill these with a buttercream and then come back and let's see if this gap closes any at all. And then we'll determine if this macaronage experiment was a success.
Okay, I'm just using a basic vanilla buttercream to fill the macarons. I've got the recipe in the description below. I'm going to put the macarons together and put them in an airtight container to store overnight.
Okay, now it's been 24 hours since we made our macarons. I took some out of the refrigerator, let them sit out for about 30 minutes to come to room temperature. We still have a slight hollow in the shell, but for the most part, we were able to let the shell mature and fill up. It's not 100% perfect, but I think it's much better than the last experiment that I did. So my conclusion in this experiment is just like learning how to make macarons, it's a process, right? So you have to keep experimenting and you have to keep practicing your techniques and just hone in your skills. And this is no different than learning how to macaronage the traditional way with the spatula. So I think we're getting much closer. I definitely want to do this experiment again. I really want to hone this skill and figure out how to macaronage with the stand mixer as well as a hand mixer. There are many people out there that love to bake and would love to make macarons, but they have a hand injury or they have carpal tunnel or something that prevents them from doing the repetitive motion of the macaronage stage. So I want to learn this so I can open up the world of macarons to so many more people that, want to learn. And, that's kind of my driving force behind wanting to learn how to do this. So stay tuned. We're not done with this experiment yet. We'll try it with the paddle attachment as well as a hand mixer. So more to come. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And while you're here, check out this other macaron video. Have a wonderful and blessed day.